How y'all doing? This book review is on Victor Milan's The Dinosaur Lords. The first of 3 books here, and I think this one came out 2015, a few months back, and I think the next one is dated for sometime next year. At this rate, we'll probably have all 3 books within probably by 2017. But regardless of that, as you can tell from the cover and from the slideshow already, you're seeing a knight riding dinosaurs, so you think it's very cool or it's very stupid there, so as a paleophile who loves fantasy, I couldn't help but wanted to try this out. After all, if you think about it, there's not too much actual fantasy that has dinosaurs in it. Most of that you find in science fiction. So this right here, okay, we'll give it I think it's worthy of a shot. Don't know much about the author outside this book. Apparently, his only award-winning novel is The Cybernetic Samurai. I think I looked through Wikipedia. He's done a lot of other stuff as well. But other than that, this is probably the only thing else giving him big news. The story, I may get into the spoiler part because I may be getting into the novel a bit, trying to tell you the setup of this story here. So if you don't want spoilers, if the slideshow and what I said before is enough, go ahead and give it a shot. But you've been warned. So this starts off a little bit with this great big battle. On one side, a guy named Rob, who's kind of a bard, a bit of a rogue. He's also one of the dinosaur lords who has who's a master handler of these beasts of various kinds, and he's in a battle against working for a lord who's going against the emperor. And on the emperor's side, you have a mercenary captain named Carl, and he is fighting for the side, and he gets betrayed by one of the knights who's also on the same side as the emperor, who turns out to be the emperor's champion. Well, after the midst of this battle, and Carl is left after surviving this wherever he can, not much of memory, suffering from nightmares, and eventually losing his hand. And Count Jaume, who did the betrayal, well, he's going, he has to live with that sort of burden, kind of against his own principles, but he did it under orders. Later on, Rob is sent by a group of people to find Carl. He was a guy who used to fight on the opposite end against Carl, who's this great mercenary captain, and tried to convince him to go to this one sacred garden, which is led by pacifists. Apparently, they need someone that can train men and to fight against people who wipe them out. And pacifists are not very good warriors, so they need to hire some. Kind of Seven Samurai sort of thing. Complications occur where Count Jaume is informed by the emperor that the church of that area finds the area of Providence, I think is the name of the pacifist area. They find that they think the pacifists are heretics, despite the fact that they don't believe in battles. Their principles and all that kind of go against the church and against the feudal structure that they live there. Well, this puts Jaume at a bit of unease, because apparently he has something to do with it, because even though he's a knight and champion, he's also a guy who's developed this philosophy of beauty and morality, which this pacifist garden of Providence has adopted. On top of that, he's also in a relationship with the emperor's daughter, and this and she doesn't seem like she has much of a role in this book, except just be the princess in the court and all that. But this may change in other books as she moves on. So here you have Rob taking Carl to Providence to help train against the dangers that are coming into this pacifist area, and Jaume is now sent by his emperor, backed by the church, to go against this area of pacifists, which adopted his lore. So that I think has roughly sum up the premise of what's going on here. And of course, around all this is dinosaurs, which are used as monsters, as beasts of burden, and so forth. In fact, Rob, one of the dinosaur lords, has a Pachyenosaurus ceratopsian. So, and I do find that the battles in this, especially when they use the dinosaurs, very interesting. like for instance, had use of these hadrosaurs that when you have them in a large number, they can emit a sound attack that can damage a lot of people, internally and such like that. So it can be used as a weapon. And again, as I said, it's like if you like that sort of Game of Thrones, but with if you like the idea of putting dinosaurs in it, so your typical other fantasy fare, this is will be right up your alley. I have to admit, the writing isn't the best I've read, but I don't let that distract me because maybe not, because when it comes to other style writers, it could be just me on how I think, how I read this. I think I read one or two other reviewers who thought that the writing was just flat out terrible. One guy I've talked to had a friend read it, and he said that it's a bit fan service, if that means anything. You sort of get the idea. I myself don't let it distract me because I think there's enough about this. I got to skim into this book again. I got interested in the characters and with the events, very interested in the world here, that I'm looking forward to probably reading the second and third book to complete it. Now, the artwork on the cover and on the inside of the chapters is done by, Richard Anderson. You saw some of the slideshow, and this. And what's interesting, in each of the chapters, it does describe the dinosaurs, in what they call them, and also they have a book, in it there's apparently a book of true names that they give to dinosaurs, are scientific names, apatosaurs and all that, but in the world they give it their own common name. Like they call them sacked butts, matadors, that sort of thing. But with that in mind, the author, and one of the things that intrigued me to want to read further into this is the author's note. He writes, "One thing you should know, this world, paradise, isn't Earth. It wasn't Earth, it won't ever be Earth, it is no alternate Earth, all else is possible." With that, and for each in a chapter setting with a little extra notes, they talk about the individual gods. As I say, it's modeled after medieval Europe, but because this isn't medieval Europe, you can have different pantheons and different ideas and philosophies around it. Again, Game of Thrones isn't our world, but they put their own gods and such like that. And there's a little bit of the epilogue at the end of this that makes me interested to see what's the origin, how do these people and dinosaurs and these creator gods all fit in. So, because apparently the events of this book is leading to signs of a possible end to the world. How big or grand of a scale? I hope not too much, because I've kind of grown leery of this whole, thanks to Dragonlance, about the gods coming by and, destroy the world, that sort of thing. But I hope I haven't spoiled it too much. I just just tried to sum up the basic setup of this. Of course, I over 400 pages, so there's a lot of detail in that, but not a heavy dose of it. I think it reads enough, but again, this is just kind of leaves on a cliffhanger. It's in order to get the fullness of this, we'll probably have to read all three of these, like Lord of the Rings. Which, if you read Lord of the Rings, the end of the stories do not put like an overall self-contained book. It just kind of stops at this point, and then you have to go to the second book just to continue on where it left off. Because that series was potentially supposed to be one story, but it had to split up in threes. But this one, again, it is not perfect, and also not for kids. There's some graphic, violence. We seem to be leaning on to let our kids read, but there is some sexual scenes in this as well. So if you're not heavily into that, of course, as I said, it's like Game of Thrones with dinosaurs. So there you go. Yeah, as I say, you don't usually find fantasy with dinosaurs in it. As I said, it's all mostly in science fiction. Jurassic Park, or I did the series The Farseer with Robert J. Sawyer. Okay, well, they kind of look like they have a fantasy look at the cover, but it's more science fiction than what it leads itself on to be. Dinosaurs are not usually put in fiction in a wide range. It's hard to really do, especially when we have people interacting with it. If you look back, okay, you have to have, in order to have people interact with dinosaurs, you either, like you did Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World, where you find an area that no one has seen before, which was possible back at the time he's written them. You could go time travel. You know, that's a classic one, and maybe a bit overdone, but there's some good stories that come from that. You know, he did what Jurassic Park was probably the one of the most innovative things that they've done, and that, you know, where they found, oh, we just found the dinosaur DNA, we just clone them. You know, we developed the technology, and then they run amok there. Yeah, or you could do like you know more exotic Lost Worlds, where you know, like Hollow Earth stories. And again, those, if you outside of adventure, they tend to be on the more or closer to science fiction they are to fantasy. At least that's how I see it. Even though there's no heavy science into it, but it is about explorers exploring worlds. Where this one is, let's just take a fantasy, but it's stripped of dragons and unicorns, and we'll just put in dinosaurs instead, and we'll make use of that. We'll put in our pantheon of gods as well. So I would recommend this because there isn't too much like this out there. And as I said, it's not the best, but I think it's worth a read if you're a paleophile and like, you know, who likes fantasy. So yeah, give it a shot there. And I think, or you could probably wait till all 3 books come out, so you don't get started on it. Just to wait till then. You may have a different view by then. Well, that's all I got for now. You all have a nice evening or day, whatever time you watch this in. Thank you.